Hello, my name is Dr. Lily Brown, and in a prior podcast, we discussed what is brain fog. Today, we'll be talking about part one of strategies for what to do about brain fog to reduce its impact on your life. So, first, if you've noticed that you're struggling with brain fog, it's extremely important to practice slowing down and being intentional about how you're spending your time. So often when we're busy, we are rocketing from place to place and going from meeting to meeting and walking quickly and multitasking. And it's important to practice intentionally slowing down, especially if you notice that you're having a hard time with concentration or paying attention. You really need to practice pacing yourself. This could look like scheduling a 5 minute break between meetings if that's at all possible to you. It could look like intentionally starting meetings 10 minutes late to give yourself a pause. However, you need to practice slowing down. It's so important that you find the time to be intentional, because when we are just reacting to our environment and rushing, it's a recipe for forgetting things. It's a recipe for not being able to focus. And for many of us, we're rushing from task to task, not being able to remember everything we have to do, and then simultaneously judging ourselves for that experience. When in reality, that rushing is, of course, going to lead to forgetfulness. Many of us have been hearing a lot about how important it is to practice mindfulness. And for some of us, that looks like practicing, sitting mindfulness meditation, which can be great. And I think that that's a fantastic practice. It's one that that I do quite regularly. I really encourage people to consider a sitting mindfulness meditation practice. But to practice mindfulness does not require that you sit still and meditate. There are lots of ways that you can practice mindfulness that have nothing to do with sitting and meditating. And so in the slide that I'm sharing on the screen, I think it's a lovely example of how, like, even taking a walk can be an opportunity to practice mindfulness, where you're maybe focusing all of your attention on the feeling of your feet on the floor beneath you, or the look of the trees or the flowers around you, or even the sidewalks or the houses that you walk by. And so there's a way to practice walking mindfully where your whole objective is, I'm just absorbing the information around me. There's also a way to walk not mindfully, which is, yes, I'm walking, but I'm also planning what we're going to have for dinner. And I'm thinking about that annoying conversation I had at work. And I'm thinking about how I'm going to respond to that email. And your mind is full, but you're not being mindful. And so mindfulness here is being super zoned into the present moment. This is a really essential strategy for combating brain fog, because it helps you to build that muscle in the prefrontal cortex of your brain, which is the muscle that's involved in planning and decision making. The more you can practice just zoning into just the here and now, even for 5 or 10 minute stretches every day, the more you can do that, the easier it's going to be to redirect your attention, to bring it back when you need to stay on task. Another point I want to make is not trying to multitask. Many of us have grown up in a culture where we're taught that multitasking is a really positive thing. There's tons of research that shows that there is no such thing as multitasking. There's some studies that show that it takes as long as 15 minutes to shift from one task to another. And yet many of us are walking around trying to multitask all the time, answering texts while we're on a Zoom, or responding to IMs while we're supposed to be, reading information. There is no such thing as multitasking. And the more you try to push yourself to do multiple things at a time, the worse your concentration is going to get. So multitasking is a myth. Anyone who's telling you that you should be a good multitasker doesn't know the research, which suggests that there is no such thing as multitasking. And the quicker we can get away from that myth, the better for all of us. The last tip I'm going to mention to you in this podcast is called the Eisenhower matrix. And this matrix is one that I use all the time. Now, I don't know about you, but I've got a to-do list that has about 50 things on it. And it's really overwhelming sometimes. I'll maybe have a 10-minute break in my day, but I've got so much to do that 5 of those minutes could be spent on deciding, okay, now what am I going to do? Which is really an inefficient use of my prefrontal cortex. And so instead, what I like to do is to map out all the stuff that I have to eventually get done using this matrix. And so what it is, it's a grid, a 4x4. And on one axis is what's important. Is it important or not important? And the other axis is how urgent is it? Is it really time sensitive or not? And you can map out all the stuff on your to-do list according to both how important is it and how time sensitive is it. Stuff that's very important and time sensitive gets put in one box. And so, when you only have 10 or 15-minute segments, you just look to that box and decide, this is the thing I need to work on for a little bit right now. It takes some of the decision making out of the equation to reduce the pressure on your brain. So I like to do this Eisenhower matrix at the beginning of my week, and then I use it throughout the week to decide, when I have those stretches, here's how I'm going to spend my time, as opposed to spending 10 minutes deciding what I'm going to do and then having no time to do it. I'll have a follow-up to this podcast, which presents some additional strategies for managing brain fog, but I hope that you found this helpful, and I hope that you return again in the future. Thank you.